Good morning, Carolyn.
It's nice to see you, Dr. Rosensweet, as I always say, because it always is.
You too,
Good
Carolyn.
morning, good morning. Okay, here we go with our questions. We have a few. And I think you're going to like this first one. Um, would an 80-year-old woman suffering from insomnia benefit from CBHRT? Is it too late?
Um, yeah, I do like that. I think I like all questions. Actually,
Well, I do too.
not very relevant, but um, the ideal time to begin treating anything and responding to any kind of health compromise is as early as is possible. So, our favorite time to begin treating hormonal changes in men and women is when they begin. Well, not exactly when they begin, because a woman's maximum hormonal output from her ovaries is plus or minus 2 years around the age 20, and then she's declining from there and forever. And there's some rather dramatic changes that take place. They can take place as early as the 30s or 40s. There's a series of changes that can take place, depletions and imbalances. And my goodness, my favorite time to be supporting a woman or a man, because men have their equivalent, that's for sure, is as early as is possible. And yeah, that's the most profound and healthy thing. But there's so many moving parts to health and life on Earth that I wouldn't want to say that it's all about the hormones. Now, having said that, we're delighted and grateful to see if we can assist a woman at any age. And because I'm a physician, I saw people of all ages from when they were in the womb until their 80s and 90s, people of all ages. And my goodness, midlife and beyond, you can sure see some of the very intense declines that take place and almost directly related to hormones. As a gerontologist once put it to us when I was a senior medical school, um, you guys, you're senior medical students, fantastic. You know thousands of diagnoses, but let me tell you what's really happening to older folks. They're losing their muscle in a degenerative process called sarcopenia. It's just occurring. And they're losing their bone, and they can't walk and stand with stability, and they fall and they fracture a hip. And back in those days, they passed away at that point, pretty much. So you want to do something for elderly people, um, learn how to treat sarcopenia, the loss of muscle, and bone loss. And he says, because that's what's really happening to older folks. And it's so true. I mean, for one thing, there's just an epidemic of nursing homes and assisted living facilities in the United States. And God bless them, my God, they just do a tremendous service. And I totally salute the work of the people on the front lines in those facilities. And I've been on the front lines of those facilities, and these are dedicated, caring, and boy, do they work, human beings. At the same time, so many of the women and men in these assisted living facilities are there primarily because of lost hormones. They lost their muscles, so they can't stand with stability. They're using canes, so that you can stay at home with canes. Then they shift to walkers. Oops, that's a little more tricky to navigate around the world. And then there's this time when even the walker won't do it, and the woman has to be in a wheelchair. All
Right.
because, in most instances, not all instances, she's lost her muscles. You can see the loss of muscles. If you live in Florida, you can see the elderly folks have very thin thighs very often and are not walking the beaches. There's not a tremendous number of them walking the beaches. And it's a lot because of the challenge of walking. And what you don't see is there's a crucial muscle that holds up the bladder. It's called the levator ani. We can all contact that muscle by squeezing our anus right now. I'm doing it.
I don't believe you.
It's a good exercise to strengthen that muscle because we need that muscle, and that muscle holds up the bladder and the uterus and the pelvic organs and part of the sigmoid colon. Oh my God! And when you get sarcopenia of the levator ani, you get a falling bladder that's very prone to losing your urine, called incontinence, and thus requiring adult diapers. And between adult diapers and wheelchairs, you've got the recipe for assisted living and ultimately nursing homes. Now, there's other things that can relate to hormones. In many women, cognitive decline, the ability to think clearly, memory can be very much associated with loss of hormones. There are other causes, of course. So, a lot of reason to address hormonal decline. There's a lot of things I haven't mentioned: energy, mood, sleep. There's so many things I haven't mentioned, but I want to keep our focus on the main things that really give the elderly trouble. Now, my mother was not wanting to have her son be her doctor. Shall we call it old school?
And well, my grandmother didn't want my father being her doctor either. Trust that. Nope.
So by the time she really had lost a lot, and I started treating her with hormones in her late 80s, as well as my mother-in-law, my beloved mother-in-law, and her daughter is on this call with us right now. And my goodness, to advantage. It was I wish we could have started much earlier, but it definitely gave some benefit. And so we never say never. Whenever the opportunity arises, we have this video of my mother-in-law who, she had gotten sarcopenia and osteoporosis. She just turned in her kitchen, fell to the tile floor, fractured her pelvis, fractured her humerus, that's her arm and her shoulder, and was in rehab for 3 months.
Yeah.
And it was, and then when she got out of rehab, we put her on hormones, and my God, we have a picture of her. And prior to that, she was only walking with a walker. We have a video of her sitting on a low couch, soft couch, with her arms outstretched like this and a big smile on her face, and standing up without using her hands. So
beautiful.
That's really dramatic. And my mother was walking with a cane, and we have a picture of her walking without a cane after being treated with hormones for a while. So you never say never. There are particular attentions that we need to pay when some woman has been 10 years without hormones. Let's say her last period was 10 years ago and she didn't have any hormones, or 20 years ago, or 30 years ago. The hormones are so significant that, and they play such a role in the health of the coronary arteries, for example, that every woman that has been 10 years out, and sometimes 7 years out, and sometimes 3 years out, depending on their cardiac risk factors, they're at special risk for coronary events. And we prior to treating a woman, we prefer that you have a visit to a cardiologist and be cleared that her coronary arteries do not have a clot in them. This is very important. Yeah. And sometimes we'll do some very fancy coagulation profiles to make sure that they don't have an increased propensity to clot when we intersect a woman in her 80s, for example, who's been with hormones for a long but there's always a way. There's always a way. So it always comes down to the exact same thing. The job of the woman is to go shopping until she connects up with a healthcare provider that has taken on the details of becoming an expert in treating women in menopause with compounded bioidentical hormones. That's the job. I gave you a long description here, but the job translates into find a healthcare professional that knows what they're doing around treating women in menopause with hormones. That's crucial, number one. You do that, you'll go on a journey with this person, and they'll take you through the steps, and you'll get it right, and you'll get benefit, if not huge benefit. So that's your job. Go shopping for that provider, and yeah, any age, and there's always a way, and that's what we do. That's what we spend our time doing. Is you have to individualize the individual woman and take a look at what her special circumstances are, and you just address the circumstances.
Cool. Well, I guess you answered that question really well, for sure. Okay. Well, I'll move on to question number 2. And it comes from a questioner who says, does progesterone cream build up in your fat over 3 to 4 days? And do you think that 20 milligrams of progesterone over-the-counter cream is too much?
Well, all steroid hormones, that means all hormones coming out of the ovaries, for one, are fat soluble. They're not water soluble.
Right.
And that's the way things go in the world of biochemistry. Some things dissolve in water. Some things don't dissolve in water. And just take a look at your salad dressing bottle. You got 2 different layers there because they're not dissolving in the water part of that thing.
Right.
Like the vinegar is not dissolving. The oil is not dissolving into the vinegar part of the salad dressing. And it's floating on top of the vinegar part because it won't dissolve in the vinegar part, which is watery. Well, steroid hormones, they behave like fats. They're fat, and they're only soluble in fat solvents. And so when a woman takes any kind of steroid hormone, like progesterone, for example, and she takes it by skin or takes it by mouth, it gets distributed to the whole body, at least part of what she applied or swallowed. And what does it do? It goes to every cell that the blood goes to. And one of its favorite locations is the fat cells in a woman's body. So when a woman has been depleted of progesterone for a long period of time, when she takes a dose of progesterone, there's 2 things that happen with that dose. Some of that dose, when it's absorbed in the body, gets absorbed into the fat. And so the fat, in this case, sort of acts like a strategic reserve, a bank account. And other parts of that hormone that she applied to her skin or swallowed, that actually goes distributed to the cells and does what progesterone does within cells. So the answer to the question is, when you're taking progesterone, some of it does go into the fat. 4 days, very unlikely.
Yeah, 2 to
Depends
3.
on the amount of adipose tissue that a woman has, the amount of fat tissue she has. And there's what you see and there's what you don't see. Because there's plenty of fat that we don't see, like inside the abdomen, for example. But a short period of time with 20 milligrams, no. 20 milligrams is not a huge dose. Now, was this applied to the skin or swallowed? It doesn't matter. You're only going to get about 5, 10, 15, 20% maximum of whatever you swallow or apply to your skin. This is 20 total milligrams is not a humongous dose.
Okay.
I don't know. Did she say how she was applying it?
No, she didn't. That was the exact question.
And you can tell when you're overdosed with progesterone. It's hard to overdose on progesterone. For one thing, it's very, very hard for most, but not all. Oh no, there are exceptions. It's very, very hard for most women to overdose on the progesterone that they can get prescribed when it's in a cream or a gel or organic oils. It's very hard for most, not all, as one of our listeners knows. Most women cannot overdose on what they can purchase or like, for example, a woman's native body really had a wonderful need for a robust amount of progesterone, maybe 100 times the amount of estrogen. Yeah. And then during pregnancy, she took many multiples of that, but the progesterone levels are just astronomically high. So her body's used to progesterone, and certainly when pregnant, it's super high levels. And a lot of women feel pretty mellow when they're pregnant and they get that super high level of progesterone because it's a quieter for most women. And it's hard. You just can't make a suspension or a solution concentrated enough to deliver anything by topical, transdermal, or transmucosal. You just can't make it concentrated enough to overdose. And so there's no worries there. You can go wild. The worst thing that'll happen if you apply too much, let's say it's sleep time, you're going to wake up in the morning and feel like you have a hangover, like you had been given an overdose of sleeping pill. Progesterone's very calming, so too much progesterone, too much calm.
Got it.
So very hard to overdose on progesterone. Orally, the common dosages that are out there, it's still hard to overdose on that. And the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to wake up groggy for most women. If you take it at night. Now, compounding pharmacists are able to make dosages even higher than 200 milligrams orally, and so you can really get some high levels there. I don't recommend that. It's only in very unusual cases. I've been hearing that there are people who are using very high levels of progesterone. I don't understand that, but they're doing it. So your question was, can you overdose on this stuff? No. Pretty hard.
Got it. Thank you. I mean, I know you've said that, one could take enough progesterone to be put to sleep, which is always something very amazing to me. I guess they came out with better things, but
Why don't you, just to clarify that, progesterone is such a calmer that if we were to choose the right dosage and administer it intravenous, we could be put to sleep so deep that surgery could be performed on us. Now, no one's doing that, like you were saying. The other thing about progesterone is it's not uncommon for women to have special sensitivity to it. They can tolerate estrogen, they can tolerate testosterone, and they can embrace and love and cherish estrogens and testosterone, but not necessarily progesterone. This isn't common, but it definitely happens out there. And some women, they're very sensitive to progesterone. Like, for example, we administer progesterone in an oil, and it's 8.7 milligrams per drop. And I have a patient in her 70s. I've worked with her for 20 years. If she takes 5 drops a night of progesterone, she sleeps really well. If she takes 6 drops, that would be equivalent of about 50 milligrams topically, which is probably absorbing 10% of that. She wakes up groggy. So there are special sensitivities to progesterone, and it just takes us all back to the same thing. We've got to individualize progesterone and everything else to the individual woman. And we start low. We start administering low dosages, and we gradually increase with the intention of alleviating symptoms of progesterone insufficiency while falling shy of or backing down from symptoms of progesterone excess. If you download our book, we describe this in great detail. Carolyn has posted this access to this book on the ins and outs of menopause.
Right, and we also have charts too that show, low doses, high doses, this, that, too. That any woman can write to me and ask me for, and I'll send it to them.
We have an interesting comment from one of our listeners, Kim, who apparently did not tolerate progesterone in the beginning at all. And what she's stating is the more that her body healed, the more she was able to tolerate progesterone after years of poor toleration. So, yeah, nothing is written in stone either. Healing is a great thing. And all kinds of good side accoutrements can occur, including new tolerance for progesterone. It's good stuff.
It is good stuff. I think it's good stuff. But I don't have that. Yeah. Horrible thing. Anyway, I'll move on. This woman says she had a hysterectomy, but she kept her ovaries. She's trying to get some idea of her cycles. She was on birth control pills all of her 20s and 30s, save for when she wanted to get pregnant, and she did. How does one know when to test? I know a lot of treatment is done based off symptoms, but I don't understand how it is that we don't need to test in order to know which hormones are out of balance.
There's a good one. And the core challenge there is the hysterectomy and the retention of the ovaries, which is a good thing. I mean, it's fine to retain the ovaries. It just makes administering hormones a little more challenging. For example, we can really tell when a woman's hormone levels have dropped really low. She'll cease menstruating. She won't have sufficient estrogen to form an endometrial lining. So that's a very useful signal. However, there's many signals. So no big deal. You just, once again, it's the same story. You work with the individual person. What's missing here is the level of details that is imperative for me to have to really give you an opinion that zeroes in on your specific needs and address it. But I'm going to take it point blank. And because one thing is, I don't know how old you are, and I don't know what your menstrual situation was and what kind of symptoms you're having or not having. Like if you're having consistent hot flashes, we know for sure that you got very low estrogen levels. So that would be a signal. So we don't need the presence or absence of menstruation to determine that you have very low hormone levels. Now, in a woman who still has her uterus, there's before menopause and before the onset of menopause and after the onset of menopause. These are two different timings. Before the onset of menopause, which I'm going to call the cessation of menstruation for 1 year. That's what I'm going to define menopause as. No periods for 1 year. Before the declaration of true menopause, the periods can be regular, they can be irregular, they can become erratic. And yet, once the period stops, the estrogen levels have dropped so low that a certain erratic nature of hormonal fluctuation does not occur. Where am I heading with all this? And then before it's obvious menopause time, there's a very erratic nature to hormone levels. Like if a young woman during a cycle has hormone levels that look like this through 28 days, smooth, predictable, regular, low at the time of the period, rising mid-cycle, falling again, then rising again, very smooth, very predictable. That woman can be tested, especially if she has a regular period, but not a woman in the perimenopause, because her hormone levels are bouncing all over the place as this sort of ping pong situation arises between the brain and the ovaries, because the brain's detecting low hormones. It tries to stimulate the ovaries via pituitary hormones. It does. That stimulation, that burst of stimulation works. You get a higher level of estrogen, for example, than you ever had when you were younger, but it can't sustain, so it drops really low. Why am I saying all this? It depends. The testing is not very valuable, because if you test on a day when she got one of those bursts, she'll have very high levels, higher than young women. If you test on a day where she was having one of those low things, she'll go oh my God, she must be menopausal. She's got very low levels. It doesn't work to test a woman in the perimenopause. Classic example, a woman 48 is having erratic periods, and she's having hot flashes almost every night. And she's having trouble sleeping. She's waking up in the middle of the night with hot flashes. If you test this woman because she's still having erratic periods and you catch her on the right day, you're going to see that her estrogen levels are low. If you catch her on the wrong day, you're going to see her estrogen levels are high. How did I learn this? I tested one such woman 25 years ago, and the report came back that her estrogen levels were really high. And yet she's having hot flashes every night. So what am I certain of? The woman's low in estrogen. So I said to her, as I'm reviewing this test result with her, well, I'd like to give you estrogen anyway, because you're estrogen deficient because you're having hot flashes. She's looking at the test report that shows high estrogens. The level of discomfort in that room hit the ceiling, and it was a tall ceiling. I can picture it now where that was.
Did you get her down?
She thought I was nuts. I just tested her, shows really high estrogen levels, and I want to give her estrogen. So what we train in our training, and we have an expert training, we train physicians and nurse practitioners and compounding pharmacists how to treat women in menopause with bioidentical hormones. And what we say is, don't test a woman in the perimenopause, with almost no exceptions. Of course, there's always an exception in medicine, but you're going to get confounding results that aren't going to help you. It's not going to help the process. Don't test her. So if this woman still has her ovaries, we're not going to rely on testing her, but there's some very reliable ways to proceed here. Having said all this, this is not rocket surgery we're talking about here. Get it? Rocket science, brain surgery, rocket surgery. A woman who's low in hormones, 75% of women who are low in hormones, not 100%, 75% of women who are low in hormones have symptoms of low hormones. These are some of the most powerful biochemicals in our body. So when you get low estrogen, for example, there's a long list of symptoms, which we list in our book. We give women this particular description of low, too much, and too little. And so there's a lot of different ways to determine for this patient who's had a hysterectomy how to proceed. What I'm saying is testing isn't one of them, but you don't need to. Now, we test 100% of our women, always, usually at somewhere between the 3 and 5 month mark. And we do that when we've adjusted that hormonal program so that their symptoms are alleviated, they feel good, it's clinically, it's pretty obvious that we've gotten into a good zone of the 4 different ovarian hormones. I'm talking about estrogens, testosterone, progesterone, and DHEA. We test them then, and then the testing is very valuable because we know exactly the ranges that are optimal for most women. So that's what we do. We test all women once they say to us, and this is a very common time, I'm just taking a note here, it's a very common time when they say, wow, I feel better now. I feel good. I think I've got my right dosages. Takes 2 to 5 months to do that. Sometimes longer, sometimes a year, sometimes 2 years to do that. And that's when a woman says, gee, I feel a lot better now, and they're on a stable dose of the hormones, that's when we test them. Now, I want to bring something else up. We have an amazing team, and our core vision and mission is this. We believe that this planet needs more feminine energy, more of the presence of the divine feminine. We need more feminine energy in the halls of decision, which could be the home or the community or local politics or national politics. Wherever decisions are being made that affect other human beings, we think there's a need for far more feminine energy than is in there right now.
Thank
And
you.
that's what our team is devoted to. And we have a lot of leverage because women in midlife, a certain high percentage of women, when they lose those hormones, they lose the power, they lose the mood, they lose the sleep, they lose the libido, they lose the drive. So by replenishing hormones, it's not that hard to get a woman in a much better state. And so our goal is to treat the women, and then the women go out and do the thing. And so I've always wanted to have political influence, beneficial influence on this planet. And by God, did our team find our niche? And we've got some very brilliant people on this team.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they're very used to research. And one of the things they discovered is that, for one thing, what we know is compounded bioidentical hormones administered by an expert in treating women in menopause is the way to go. It's the optimal way. It doesn't mean that other hormones don't benefit folks, and even imprecise treatment programs, they do. If you can get hormones, get the hormones. But the state of the art is compounded bioidentical hormones administered by a healthcare professional who really knows what they're doing. And this has become the world of those who have the financial resources to be able to afford that, because most healthcare providers who are doing this work is very rarely covered by insurance, especially the hormones themselves. So it's limited this. So our team has done research to discover this. And what we've come to understand is the principal obstacle for many women is the monthly cost of the hormones. So we have developed a program where you women, you can receive all 4 ovarian hormones in our organic oils base for $99 a month, which is half or less than half of which most women are paying for these hormones. So we've even given it a new name. We call it Bright, because we're also going to be treating men. This is my testosterone, for example. And yes, compounded bioidentical hormones delivered in organic oils base. We encourage you to go to www.menopausemethod.com if you're interested in receiving 4 ovarian hormones for $99 a month. Contact us.
I'm going to put that right on the group.
That's great.
Yeah, I will, so that women know, because I see this coming up on the chat, and yeah. Anyway, so yeah, www.menopausemethod.com.
Yes.
I will put that out there as soon as we finish, so that women will know where to go. Yay. The work you've done is amazing. I've known you a few years now, and I've watched all of this, and
Yeah,
I'm
right.
stupefied. I am. And I'm very happy to be able to be some small part of this.
You
It's
betcha, Carolyn.
really,
Yeah, this is a treasured community, and I'm going to get more involved in this community.
And I can't wait. Yay.
I have not had the time or the ability to go in and answer your questions directly on Facebook, and our team is going to make it easier for me to do that. And yeah, so
well, we are going to welcome you with open arms. Big virtual hug to Dr. R, for sure. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for the Bright program. Thank you for your team. I know who they are, and they are amazing, and you're amazing, and all the women up here are amazing. So with that, I'm going to go ahead with the next question. I am one of these women who does not tolerate progesterone at all. I'm 49, still ovulating. I did have a Novissure procedure done in 2009. I've not had a period since. I'm very low in estrogen and testosterone, but I'm continually condoned for using estrogen without progesterone. And I am definitely currently doctor shopping, she says.
That's the that's the most important statement in that
Right,
question.
exactly.
And
They're
we're
doing
at a primitive time in human history, in case people haven't noticed this, and it's just a one degree past cave people consciousness going on here. I don't want to be overly intense about it, but my God, this planet, and it's the same is true in medicine. I mean, you'd think that you'd be able to go down into your local doctor's office and get excellent treatment, and this is a brand new um, world where, in the world of medicine, where there's been so much specialization, so much standard of care, so much board certified neurologists and orthopedic surgeons and internists and obstetric and gynecologists. It's just on and on and on. These people have been highly trained, highly mentored. They have a tremendous level of expertise. Not so for treating women in menopause with compounded bioidentical hormones. No, the opposite. The whole field got terribly restricted when everyone got terrified in 2002 with false reports of a study. False reports of the Women's Health Initiative. The very thing that scared women and healthcare providers away from treating women in menopause with hormones was false. Even the original study committee retracted it in 2017. They said after 18 years of follow-up, there was no increased risk of breast cancer, heart attack, and stroke for women treated with hormones. How many people have heard of that? Well, the whole field got stunted. So you don't get the level of expertise. So you can't just go out there and say, well, I'll go to anyone who's treating women in menopause with hormones, and I'll get standard of care. No, one of the missions of our group is to establish standard of care. We feel like we have established standard of care. Now can we get it widespread? So sorry to go off in such a tangent there. Your job is a job that maybe in 50 years, your daughters and granddaughters will not have to do this. But your job is you have to go looking for these folks. One of the resources I recommend is our www.menopausemethod.com. There are some states that we're training people in.
Yeah, it's just put up right here in the chat too. So yeah, good.
But yeah, you have to go shopping. And there's some decent work being done out there. And you got to go find these people. And almost one of your major clues is, are they doing 24-hour urine hormone tests? That's 24-hour urine hormone tests. This is not peeing on filter paper 5 times. No, there are many problems with that. This is 24-hour urine hormone collection. Boy, if your physician or nurse practitioner or prescribing compounding pharmacist is doing 24-hour urine hormone testing, you know that they've taken care and effort and time and energy and money to learn a lot about hormones, because that's what you need to be able to assess a woman that you're treating. That's one of the criteria. But at any rate, go shopping. In telemedicine has made it even so much easier. My God, if there's a healthcare provider in your state, anywhere, you can do all of menopause medicine by telemedicine. I haven't had a brick and mortar office, and I'm treating many, many women, along with teaching. Majorly, I'm teaching, but I'm still treating women. Definitely want to stay involved on that level. I can treat anyone in Florida because I'm licensed in Florida by telemedicine. It does require that a woman have a local healthcare provider that's willing to do annual exams or any kind of medical situation that requires an in-person office visit for physical exam. But the menopause part lends itself amazingly well to telemedicine. So all you got to do is find someone in your state. And we're identifying these folks and training these folks all the time. So check in with our team And yeah, they're out there. We're able to solve these things in challenging times. I don't know if anyone's noticed. I mean, it's barely come into my awareness that living on Earth has challenges.
Didn't notice.
I
I've
just
been
noticed it
oblivious.
last week.
Right.
So rise up, stretch. One of the things I learned in this fabulous training program called Hardcore Leadership was the power of stretching. Where if you have a good life and yet you want more, how do you get the more? How do you become more? How do you contribute more? You have to stretch. So this morning, for example, where I live in the mountains, there was frost on the ground, and my God, it was cold. And I wanted to take a walk. And in order to get myself out that door, I had to stretch. Come on, you can do it. Get yourself out that door and take that walk, for God's sake, will you? And of course, once I made it out the door, well, it was great. And I was so grateful I had done it. But what I'm describing is the need to stretch. So, women on this site, you need to stretch to go find that person that is educated and experienced or is getting mentored in how to treat women in menopause with compounded bioidentical hormones. They're out there. You can find them. There's websites you can go to, for example, where folks are advertising that they're treating women in menopause with compounded bioidentical hormones. I'm going to put them in this chat right now. You go to these websites.
Okay.
These organizations, they're involved in training physicians, and if you type in your zip code, you'll often see which one of the physicians in their roster actually treats women in menopause with compounded bioidentical hormones.
Thank you so much for that.
And
Yes.
you can encourage these folks, and I encourage you to encourage these folks to learn how to do, and we will hold their hand on how to convert from the creams and gels and troches and pellets, all this stuff that is not the best stuff, and oral hormones and stuff, into the organic oils base that you can pay $99 a month for all four of them. We see one of our viewers here is paying $300 a month. This is very typical of what women are paying for hormones. Well, we've got this because we know a lot of folks, and we can approach the national pharmacy with the possibility of receiving thousands of prescriptions because we know so many. We've trained so many people. They were willing to do this extraordinary offer to us that if we come up with a certain number of prescriptions, they're going to be able to continue to offer. We'll be able to continue to offer all four ovarian hormones for $99 a month, no matter what combination you need. And that includes the oral progesterone if that's what you need. And this would be in the organic oils because that's what we love. We want you to have the best. We want you to have healthy stuff that you're applying to your skin, and not these topical hormones that are in solvents. So anyway,
God, thank you so much for doing that. Thank
yeah.
your team so much for doing that. It's going to be huge. I mean, it's amazing. I can't stop smiling because I just think it's great. I really do. Let me move to number 5. Do bioidentical hormones help our bone and joint pain? I have really bad musculoskeletal pain. See a chiropractor, work out 2 to 3 times per week, and I get cortisol shots. But this is not helping. This is what we left off at on our last Facebook Live. So she's asking if you have any thoughts about that.
What I'd like to do is do a little diversion. I want to start answering some of the questions of women who actually show up to this Facebook Live.
I'm
Virginia
happy
is saying,
to. Okay.
Virginia is saying, "Hi, doctor. I'm 76 years old and have a lot of hot sweats and my hormones are in balance. Not quite understanding that sentence, but your hormones are not in balance. And those hot sweats are, right now they're uncomfortable, but they're a gift that your body's given you. Your body's saying something's not right here. And the main thing about those hot sweats is they are hormonal insufficiency and hormonal imbalance, ovarian hormone insufficiency. Almost all the time, those hot sweats are from low estrogens. So whatever hormones you're on, and congratulations if you are on hormones, you're not on enough. So your job becomes the only job that every woman has here. It's to go shopping and find a healthcare provider who's knowledgeable in treating women in menopause with bioidentical hormones, because you need some estrogen, you need some progesterone, you need testosterone, you need some DHEA, and you may even need some thyroid, just as far as hormones go. These are power chemicals. These are the most powerful chemicals in our body. We don't do well without them. The good news, being 76 and having hot sweats, is you have symptoms. 75% of women in menopause do have symptoms. It's the 25% that don't have symptoms and think, hey, I just sailed through menopause. No, you have all women have low hormones. All men have low hormones. This is not good for quality of life, especially as we get into the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So these hot sweats are actually a gift, because if you keep paying attention to them and you keep following the bouncing ball, it's going to take you to a healthcare provider that goes, oh, you need some estrogens, progesterone, testosterone, and DHEA, and maybe even some thyroid. And here you go. We're going to do that, because that's what you need, Virginia. You need to your job is to find the healthcare provider who's knowledgeable about treating women in menopause with compounded bioidentical hormones. You could start by going to www.menopausemethod.com. We have trained providers, and we have access to some in some of the states, and you can also obtain that extraordinary deal of $99 a month for all 4 ovarian hormones. Anyway, hot sweats 99% of the time in a woman who's 76 is you don't have the right hormones in the right balance. And Facebook user, I'm no longer living in Florida.
That's why there's no snow there.
That's why there's no snow, but there is snow in North Carolina where I now live.
And a cow.
And cows.
I haven't heard from the cow lately.
Now, Carolyn, would you repeat that question that you?
I will. There's another question that just came up that I actually do have here. The question was, do bioidentical hormones help our bone and joint pain? I've had really bad musculoskeletal pain. See a chiropractor. Work out 2 times per week, and I get cortisol shots, but this is not helping. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that, Dr. R.
Great question. When you go into our book, or you go into Google or anything, and you look at what are the symptoms of women in menopause, you're going to see a long list. And a lot of the things on that list are symptoms that can come from serious illnesses, autoimmune illnesses, arthritis, for example, as it relates to joint pain. Long list. And on the list of possible symptoms of deficiency of ovarian hormones, which is what menopause is primarily about, you will see joint and muscle pain listed. It's in our book, joint and muscle pain. Go figure. Why would you get that? But you do. You can. And we have a very extensive questionnaire when we're working with a woman in menopause. That's how the initial consultation begins, is the review of that questionnaire. And on it, there can be a long, long, long list of symptoms that are possible, including joint and muscle pain. And what we train our providers is, when a woman in midlife comes in with a long, long list of symptoms, treat the menopause first and see what is left. And I've been blown away by the number of women who've complained of joint pain, muscle pain, bone pain,
hip pain,
hip pain, very common, that when they're treated properly with menopause, it goes away. It's sort of staggering. The most intense example I ever have, and I've mentioned on this before, is I was practicing in Naples, Florida, and there was a high-end real estate agent, woman in her mid-50s, came to me for the first time, and I'm sitting in my office and I'm reviewing her questionnaire, and I see she's taking OxyContin, which is a narcotic. And why is she taking OxyContin? Because she's having pain in her hips, etc. And she's been taking it for 8 months by then. And I'm sitting there going, at that stage of my career, I'm going, do I really want to get involved with an OxyContin addict here? For one thing, I'm totally untrained in narcotics addiction, no skills, and this is what I could be walking into if I agree to be her physician. And yet she seemed very intelligent, and she certainly didn't seem drugged. And as I always do, I flew by the seat of my pants and my intuition. I said, okay, I'm gonna treat her. And I did mention to her that I would not ever be writing her a prescription for OxyContin. We were totally independent of that. I'm just there to treat her menopause. So 5 weeks later, as one of our listeners will recognize this, I was getting out of my car, going to Food and Thought, the world's greatest health food store on the planet Earth in Naples, Florida. Getting out of my car, I'm walking across the parking lot, and this real estate agent comes running up to me, tremendously excited. She said, "My pain is gone." And I dropped the OxyContin cold. She wasn't taking OxyContin. Hardly anybody drops a narcotic cold. She had. And she said, I needed the narcotic because I was in pain. And now all my pain has disappeared. And she was very, very excited and very, very grateful. I'm giving you a rather extreme example, but that's a true story happening from a living human being. And so I would never for a moment claim that, well, if you're a woman in midlife is in pain, it's from low hormones. No way. Please hear that. I'm not claiming that. But I am saying when you got a symptom complex like what you described, what we train our physicians and nurse practitioners and prescribing compounding pharmacists to do and physicians' assistants to do is treat the menopause first, see what's left. Don't go doing your fancy, extensive diagnostic panel and testing for autoimmune illnesses, for example. Treat the menopause first and see what symptoms actually remain, and you're going to be delighted. It's going to take care of stuff that you'd never dream that could have derived from low hormones.
Well, I can attest to that for sure. Thank you. This question has come up here, and it's coming up here. I believe. Women is saying, I'm 51. I've always battled whole body inflammation. I'm feeling pretty good right now, but my whole body feels flabby and kind of soft. And I'm wondering if this means that my inflammation is low, or could it be hormones? And if so, would you have any idea maybe which hormone this would be? And the question on the chat is, I've been feeling really weak and wobbly since starting E. Will this get better the higher my E level gets? My T and P are in the higher range.
I'm going to keep those as distinct questions, and not enough information from that first question that you read.
Okay.
And too many moving parts there.
Okay.
But still, I want to work with what we actually do have. I want to isolate out the word flabby. Chronic inflammation can have a multitude of causes, and you want to get someone who's really expert, and you're really in the realm of functional medicine physicians who've been specially trained. There's a multitude of causes of chronic inflammation. I don't know where it is in your body, what you're describing, whether it's thyroid inflammation or muscle inflammation or joint inflammation. There's all kinds of chronic inflammations or gut inflammation. But that inflammation is being provoked by something, so you want to be able to connect up with an expert who knows how to follow the bouncing ball to uncover what in the heck is provoking chronic inflammation. And so there's always causes, always. And so you get someone who that's what they're trained to do, to be a detective and find out what in the heck is causing chronic inflammation. Now, as I mentioned in the previous question, there is some situations in menopause where the chronic inflammation is really resulting ultimately from low hormones, and you replenish the hormones and the inflammation goes away. But this, I got from the questionnaire, from at least my listening of it, that this might have more moving parts. There might be other disturbances, and you got to know how to follow the causes of chronic inflammation, the ultimate causes, where, for example, your immune system's over-responding to unbeneficial residents of your intestinal flora, where you've got bugs in there that the immune system holds as foe and it's provoking the immune system. It'll provoke an autoimmune response. There's just all kinds of causes of chronic inflammation. So I don't want to suggest that this is a hormone thing. But the other part of her question, she had the word flabby in there. And by flabby, I mean many women will point to their triceps area and they'll bounce it around a little bit. There's some flab that's developed there. That flab happens to be the replacement of muscle. The disappearance of muscle, sarcopenia, I talked about it earlier today. The loss of actual triceps muscle. And if you're losing triceps, you're losing muscle everywhere. And if you're talking about that kind of flabbiness, that can be very, very, very related to hormonal insufficiency. And it's related most commonly, as far as hormones go, to a deficiency in testosterone. Testosterone is not a male hormone. It is a human hormone. And we hold testosterone to be as absolutely critical in getting testosterone right for a woman's whole lifetime, because it so relates to muscle and many other muscle and mood and strength and the ability to walk and hold up your bladder and not wear adult diapers. Testosterone is a critical hormone, and it relates in many cases to libido. And this can be very, very important if you want to sustain or recover your libido. So testosterone, testosterone, testosterone. Someone trained in treating women in menopause with compounded bioidentical hormones is going to know about testosterone and is going to prescribe testosterone. And there's not a single woman over 25 years that once they're in menopause, they're not low in testosterone. Why not? I mean, the ovaries aren't producing testosterone anymore. Now, sometimes it comes a little later. Some women, it takes a year or two in menopause to develop testosterone insufficiencies. But these days, it seems like every woman, with very rare exceptions, is entering menopause already drained down her testosterone because of excessive demands placed on the fight by the fight or flight biology that wears down all the hormones, including the estrogens, testosterone, thyroid, adrenals, corticosteroids, adrenaline. You overuse the fight or flight biology that recruits all those hormones, and you reach a point where you're not producing enough. So that flab could be from low testosterone. And yeah, get thee to someone who knows what they're doing in the world of compounded bioidentical hormones and also is an expert in testosterone, because it really matters. So it's time. And today, of course, Thanksgiving is coming up, so we won't have our Thursday show, but I'll be seeing everybody next Tuesday.
That's right. And then you're going to be coming up on yours and my page group soon enough. Thank you.
Yes, I'll start answering the number of questions I'm able to.
That's wonderful,
As
Doctor.
they show up on Facebook, yeah.
I'm going to wish
we'll
you
save some of them for our Tuesday and Thursday mornings when they have universal appeal, as most all of them do.
No, we get
Yeah.
great
Whoa.
questions. So I'm going to wish you a really wonderful, happy Thanksgiving. You, your family, your team, everybody, all the women who come up and men. And I'm going to bid everyone adieu and say God bless and just enjoy, be safe, be happy, be well.
And I'm thankful for this opportunity, Carolyn. I'm thankful for another year of us doing this, and thankful to our community of women
Absolutely.
who participate with us. And it's an honor and a privilege
Thank
to be
you.
able
It
to do
is
this
for
work. And
me.
I'm very thankful.
I am too. Oh, in a big way. You don't know.
All right.
Really. Okay.
Bye
Enjoy,
bye now.
everybody. See you later.